We ring our peace bowl this morning to affirm our collective hope, our yearning for peace. We also ring this bowl to affirm that these lands that we love, where the sun rose this morning, where the javelinas were cavorting behind our house last night, it is spring. That these lands that we love are the ancestral lands of the Yavapai people, the Cuevquepayas, the Tolquepayas, the Wipukepas, and the Yavapai. Today we are talking about fathers. Happy Father's Day to all of you who are here, who have had that experience, who are in whatever state of happiness or sadness, because I believe parenting takes us the whole range. We are talking about fathers beyond the fathers who were on television when I was a child. We are talking about fathers beyond those as Ward Cleaver of Leave It to Beaver and the magnificent father of Father Knows Best. Mine was a geologist whose love of the earth was palpable in the energy he put into helping others understand the landscape around us. And I so much wish he had been able to come here. He loved the Sonoran Desert. He loved the song we are going to sing today. In that song, dawn is coming to that landscape. The light is about to transform the desert. But first, the dawn must lead away the moon. Sonora Morning. Free.
Good morning and welcome to Granite Peak Unitarian Universalist Congregation here in beautiful Prescott, Arizona. I'm Jack Wood. I'm your worship associate today. We extend a warm welcome to all of you and a happy Father's Day. We're glad you're able to join us and hope you are all in good health. This is the mission statement of our congregation. We are a compassionate spiritual community that celebrates diversity, nurtures the personal and spiritual growth of all ages, shares our gifts, promotes justice for all, and serves the world we live in. Please join us after the service for coffee and socializing in small groups in Davis Hall across the foyer. Or for those on Zoom, please join us in those famous breakout rooms. If you're joining us for the first time, please check out our website at prescottuu.org for more information about us. And if you're here in person, there'll be time to introduce yourself at the end of the service, and then please stay and chat with a member or two. We thank our pianist, Lena Euban, our choir director, Mary Lou Prince, and all of our Sunday morning volunteers, as well as our wonderful choir. We should give them a hand. Okay, now that you know where your hands are, please take a moment and set your phones on worship mode. In addition to the announcements that we're showing on the screen before the service, you can read about other things happening here at Granite Peak in the weekly Peak newsletter on our website, in Reverend Patty's wonderful videos, and we have some printed copies of the announcements at the welcome table. Sandra Palacios, our faith development coordinator, is teaching ages 5 and older across the street at our faith development building. We begin our service in the Unitarian Universalist tradition of lighting the chalice. Our chalice lighter this morning is Dan Tokar. It always seems so easy until you have to do it. Today we light the chalice with these words. We light this chalice, a symbol of our heritage, in gratitude for this beloved community.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you, Dan, for your grace. Good morning. It's good to be here this morning after a lot of joy this weekend. We started with a dance on Friday night, and those videos are going to go viral. I just saw a couple of them last night from Bobby. They're wonderful. And then yesterday there was a pride picnic at Granite Creek Park, and it was wonderful. Lots of children and activities and joy and dogs. There were dogs and dog contests, and someone in this congregation won the prize for the slowest dog. So would you like to stand up and take a bow? Actually, her dog Dieter won the prize, but anyway. So I hope that you can hear that echo of dancing feet and feel that courage and joy of that picnic. Let us rise in body or spirit, and we will sing, "Enter, rejoice, and come in." Enter, rejoice, and come in. Enter, rejoice, and come in. Today will be a joyful day. Enter, rejoice, and come in. Open your ears to the song. Open your ears to the song. Today will be a joyful day. Open, rejoice, and come in. Open your hearts, everyone. Open your hearts, everyone. Today will be a joyful day. Enter, rejoice, and come in. Don't be afraid of some change. Don't be afraid of some change. Today will be a joyful day. Enter, rejoice, and come in. Enter, rejoice, and come in. Enter, rejoice, and come in. Today will be a joyful day. Enter, rejoice, and come in. Woo, thank you. There's been a suggestion of starting with that song sometimes. I think that's a wonderful idea. And now let us say our covenant together. Love is the doctrine of this congregation. The quest for truth is sacrament, and service is its prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge in freedom, to serve others in community. Thus do we covenant together. And now I invite you into our time of joys and sorrows. And just to let you know, we are starting to have papers in the entryway where you can write more completely what your joy and sorrow is. And I won't have to be trying to interpret what I'm hearing from you out there. So if you let's just gradually try to do that, and then I can read those. And I think that will better express what is happening in your lives. And as I look out, I invite all of you to just breathe together and listen to this sound once again. Let us breathe and remember or feel, imagine that feeling of the earth under our feet, of that land that we love. Sometimes it is rich, dark farmland, or it could be those rocky trails on the Grand Canyon, going downward and downward. Or that pathway we walk with our dog. Those paths that rise out of so many places around us in this part of the earth. And as we think of this earth beneath us, let us consider, as my father would, what is beneath that layer that we can feel, the many layers, the constant change, the movement, going down farther into the earth until we get to that fiery place. And then I invite you to breathe and feel the sun that is so gentle and lovely in this season on our shoulders. And breathe in that air that can smell of butterscotch, that clear air we love. And above us, those ever-changing clouds. And above that, this universe that is again changing. Stars are being born and stars are dying. And with that perspective, we return to our hearts, where we hold all that is in our lives and so much that is in this earth. We hold those people who arrived to the shores of Greece, rescued by the Coast Guard there, wondering if their children would be found or their parents would be found. We hold them. And we hold this earth that is in all of its changing and all of the wars that are happening, the creation of more and more refugees. Let us hold them in the circle of our community. And now especially, I want us to turn to our own being fathers, or the fathers we had. The fathers may not have been our biological father who supported us, but that fatherly energy that supported us at different times or throughout our lives. Let us hold that. We especially hold Bonnie Fort, who has just lost her father. And we hold those who have children, who are worried about their children, and who find joy in their children. And most of fathers who find both. We hold Briggy Dickinson, who was discharged from the hospital this week and is at home. And to heal the food insecurity, which our Social Justice Council decided as one of the most important areas of our concern in this place. I also invite you, as you come up, to remember your fathers, to consider your own fatherhood, and to bring your joys and sorrows, and bring a stone that you might drop in the water. We also at this time bring our food baskets, our food that will go into the food pantry. At the Pride picnic yesterday, someone came to our booth and said, "I know you. Are you on Sunset Avenue?" And I said, "Yes." And she said, "I go to your pantry." Yeah. So I will ring this bell. But first I ask, some people are annoyed by this time that I ask for names. Those of you who aren't annoyed, are there people you would like to lift up at this time in a way that I can hear correctly and give the name? Who you would like to especially lift up on this day? Yes. Oh, the friends and family of Steve Jackson, who was killed by a bear in the Groom Creek area. Yes. Yes. So now I invite you into that time when Lena will play and we can come up and put our stones in the water. I will put one for my father, who I love dearly. Please join me in a spirit of meditation and prayer. Spirit of life, we give thanks for fathers. We ask for comfort and blessing on those who mourn. We ask to be ready to celebrate with those who have joy. Amen, and may it be so. And now let us sing the song that we sing, Walking, Walking with You. Walking, walking with you, walking with you is my prayer.
As we prepare to take the offering this morning, let us embrace the feeling of connection and community that we have when we gather here together each week. Let us remember that this congregation and its programs are supported by your generosity. We also give back to the greater community through our Seeds of Support program. This month's recipient is PRISM Network. PRISM Network was formerly called the Greater Yavapai County Coalition. And PRISM Network is a nonprofit collaboration of organizations that provide an umbrella of support to members and allies of the LGBTQ plus community in Yavapai County, Arizona. You can read about them some more in the order of service or online. To give online, the link is available in the chat room, or you can also go to the website. Please enjoy our offertory music. I had recommended this to Reverend Patty. After some arm twisting, she agreed. This is one of the most beautiful songs I know about fathers.
In looking at, and I always had a very hard time finding the right Father's Day card for my father until the Far Side started making Father's Day cards. And then it was perfect. But there's an array of them, but there are so many relationships and experiences that aren't named, that are invisible. And so we're going to move into this part of the service, honoring the complexity of this day, the complexity of relationships and experiences that may be present among us. This is a ritual that was written by two Unitarian Universalist minister friends of mine. So I invite Russ and Dan. Dan. I think you're, no, but yeah. Okay. So I think, and I will be putting stones in. I will put a stone in for every kind of relationship. And you can add some at the end.
For those whose fathers have died.
For the fathers who have adopted and for biological dads.
For all those who want to be fathers and who may not have this experience.
For those whose children are far away. That's me this Father's Day.
For the father-in-laws, stepdads, co-parents who are recreating family.
For those who didn't receive the fathering that they needed.
For those who didn't offer the fathering they wish they had.
For those whose fathers have lost children, whether unborn, infants, children, youth, or adults. For the ones who are missed.
For those families that don't include a dad, yet are fathering or nurturing, who are loving and whole just as they are.
For those with wonderful and complicated relationships with their parents or with their children, all practicing the art of being human. For those who are grateful for the blessings of their fathers.
I invite all of you now to call to mind those who have been a father or father figure to you. And I invite you to say those names out loud. Ron Willis. I will put a stone for all those names unsaid. In all their uniqueness and differences, may we remember our fathers. I have been blessed with a father who loved me from the moment I entered this world. It didn't hurt that the nurse came out to where he was waiting, because that was the time when fathers waited outside the birthing room. And my father was actually very afraid of blood, something that I inherited. So I think he was very happy not to be there. But she brought me out in that little blanket and said, looked at my father and said, "She looks just like you, Mr. Willis." And I did have his blue eyes and red hair. He took me shark tooth hunting in the desert that used to be a sea. And he took me to festivals in the palace of Sheikh Isa bin Sulman Al Khalif when I was the only female present. He taught me to love the earth. If you had been a childhood friend, you would have known him, because he was the dad who would show up at school when it ended and pick us up. He wanted us to be safe. I know now that he did that because of our safety. But at the time, I kind of wanted to take the bus home or walk. With a car packed with his own children and all of our friends, we would have made our way around neighborhoods to drop children off. And on the way, he would have sung songs. If Jack had been there with the windows open, if Jack had been there, he would have made up a song. I once knew a boy named Jack, and Jack was a little boy, and Jack did his bicycle thing. And it, you know, I cannot exactly tell you, but he would always make a new song for someone whose name intrigued him at the time. And sometimes he would press on the brakes to the rhythm of the song, startling our friends, but not his children, who were accustomed to his ways. And once, when I was in junior high school, in the evening, there was a special screening at the movie theater. So there were a lot of friends, people from junior high with their parents, all in a line. Lots of my friends were there. I could see them. We were kind of going like this at each other. And as we were standing there, my father got some glasses out of his pocket. He had never worn glasses that I had seen. He got glasses out of his pocket that were big and round. And that he'd had as a student. I think they'd been reading glasses, but they had been folded somewhere and squashed, so they were crooked on his face. And he put them on his face, and no amount of asking him would get him to take them off. I wanted to disappear into the sidewalk. It was much too much for a 13-year-old. Only when I was around 40 did I grow to appreciate this aspect of my father. And this is what he wanted for us somehow. My brothers and I talk about this a lot. Why did Dad do that? He often honked and waved at people as we would drive along as a group of, as children or the family or friends in there. He would honk and wave at people who were walking along the sidewalk. And if I ever said to him, "Dad, who was that?" he'd always say, "I don't know." But I think they appreciated my saying hi to them. And when he was trying to gather his family together, when he was trying to find my mother in a public place, or find all of us somewhere in a public place, he would do the family whistle. I'm trying to, I don't know if I can do it. It's not very good. Anyway, he'd do this family whistle that came from the Volga boat song. And he had a very loud whistle. I used to whistle. Apparently I don't now. If he couldn't get us with a loud whistle of the Volga boat song, he would do a bird whistle. And then if he couldn't get us then, he would start yodeling. And he had a very loud tenor voice. Yodelay, 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 hee-hoo. And by then, we would gather. And I often heard my mother say things like, Ron, if you ever do that again. But he would do it again. And when we went to work in our large garden that was located at a farm outside of Eau Claire, Wisconsin, that belonged to the Hawkins family, and they were part of our congregation, had a big farm. We had this big piece of land that we grew everything on. He insisted that we harvest potatoes with our bare hands. It was so important to him that we got our hands dirty, that we were not afraid of getting our hands dirty. And on the way home, with his cowboy boots caked with this dark mud and all of our sweaty, looking sweaty and awful, he would inevitably stop at a store. And he would say, I'm going in to get something. You want to come with me? And then if I was, you have to sit there like, and he would go, embarrassed? I think that part of why he did all of those things was to teach us not to be embarrassed by others and not to be afraid to get our hands dirty. My father believed that we should never be embarrassed by the behavior of another person. And he wanted us to accept a wide variety of people. And he had a wide variety of friends. One of his best friends was a Cuban professor of Spanish who he would have. My father spent many years in Mexico and spoke Spanish and sang Mexican songs. And he would talk to his friend Antonio Lascano, talking to him, holding the phone like this and doing this. And anyway, we had a wide assortment of people. And if somebody who was different who came in at church, they had a meal at our house. He was also a beloved teacher of geology. One of my friends I met last year, who I went to high school with, took a class from my dad in geology. And she said he was so funny. And I remember something he'd do was I think it was on Halloween. He'd be writing something at the board. And while he was out of sight, he would put on a nose and glasses with them. And then he would turn around and completely straight-faced have the whole rest of the lesson was with that nose and glasses. But anyway, he was beloved because he loved the earth so much. He had spent a lot of energy trying to understand it, and he knew how to teach geology. And knowing all that they do, I wonder he knew so much about the Grand Canyon. And when we would go there, we went there just once. I just went there once with him. And he would explain to us what had happened with the Grand Canyon. That is a place that fills geologists with wonder. The rocks and monuments are so beloved that they are named for ancient gods. And I began to wonder, At night, I wondered if those gods rose from the temples on those amazing monuments. Did they rise from those altars and dance, a huge interfaith dance? Let us listen to the choir sing a song we wrote that I dedicate to Ronald Porter Willis, Dance of the Gods.
That choir is pretty good. My name again is Jack Wood. I am not Lydia Garrett, but Lydia is in California attending her granddaughter's graduation from college. So she had volunteered to write a little piece for this service, and she asked it because she was going to be away if I could read it for her. So I'm not going to try her Swiss accent. Oh, she doesn't have an accent. That's right. My father, Johann Lipp. As most of you know, I was born in Switzerland, where I spent my first 25 years before coming to the US some 60 plus years ago. I remember my father as enterprising, with a positive outlook, supportive and much engaged in causes, be it civic causes or community commitments, such as school boards, community and educational tasks, and the labor movement. He loved the outdoors, learned to ski and mountain climb in his 30s, and passed that on to his two daughters. Family was important to him. He loved to share exploring the country by train, bicycle, and above all, hiking in the mountains. In those days, only the well-off had cars. When he was in his late 40s, he suffered a serious traffic accident broke his left leg very badly, and found out he had advanced diabetes. The next 14 or so months he spent in and out of the hospital. For a very active person like him, that was very hard. So he used a lot of that time to write down his life story, mostly propped up in his hospital bed. 2 full notebooks, handwritten in his strong writing, tell of his early childhood and his later life. I learned that his young years were very tough, with an abusive, alcoholic father. The family was poor. Of 9 children, he was the oldest boy. He loved school, but after 8 years, it was off to factory work. He was thrown into different jobs. As an 18-year-old, he ran away to France to enlist in the Foreign Legion, but got caught and was shipped back to Switzerland. Nevertheless, he managed to get into an interesting career, and after this accident, with now restricted mobility, he found yet again new ways to make a living. Reading his notes really brought home to me his positive approach that he had shown all his life. He just never gave up, even with all the drawbacks he encountered. It made me appreciate his affirmative outlook that he kept to the last. To this day, I have kept 3 beautifully lettered inspirational sayings that he kept near his workspace, like this one: "Don't forget your aim, don't stray from the path, and don't lose your courage." He was not a saint by any means, but he managed to stress the need for joy in your life and pass it on to others. Lydia Garrett.
We drink from wells we did not dig. We reap harvests that we did not sow. Such could be said about the random privilege I had of being born as the daughter of Bob Sonnen. An edited bio of his would begin with his birth and growing up in Washington, D.C., where his father was a bookbinder for the government printing office, and his mother was a homeopathic nurse. He and his brother grew up in All Souls Unitarian Church in Washington, and he went on to run track for the University of Maryland, where he also obtained a degree in civil engineering during the Great Depression. Upon graduation, there was not much work for civil engineers during the Depression, so he took a job in surveying, which was rather boring for him, and began to think about entering the Unitarian ministry. He then attended Meadville Theological School and graduated from there at the age of 26. That 2 weeks following his graduation, he and my mother married, and they began a 5-year ministry at the First Unitarian Church of Norfolk, Virginia during World War II. I was born there. Shortly after my birth, my dad accepted a call to the pulpit of the Tulsa All Souls Unitarian Church. Upon his arrival, there had been 2 people vying for that position, and he was voted in 88-7 as the favored minister of the 2. When we arrived in Tulsa in 1944, our family lived in the upstairs of the church. 4 years later, we were moved into a parsonage as our upstairs apartment, the building next door, and as well as the rest of the church building had been taken over to accommodate the needs of his ever-growing congregation. A book was written about 90 years into the history of the Tulsa church, and there was a short section about my dad and his influence on the growth and development of that congregation in the 40s and 50s. It said, "It became known in Tulsa that the Unitarian Church had an unusually fine preacher, and church attendance increased. His dynamic personality and his keen sense of the dramatic enabled him to present a sermon worth listening to even if not profoundly religious or deeply theological. Sermon topics were often provocative: sightseeing in heaven, religious illiteracy, mere existence is not enough, the responsibilities of being godlike, Christianity is out of date, and more. I still have 7 boxes of his sermons in my garage. I feel sure that his community involvement, as he participated in the life of the city through the Red Cross, Community Fund, Planned Parenthood, Civic Music, United Nations Committee, the Tulsa Little Theater, influenced my involvement with the greater community as well. My dad wanted 2 things for his 3 kids. He wanted for us to travel and see the world and get a college education. As I walked to the church with him one morning when I was about 8 years old, he explained to me that funds had been put aside for my college education. I realized in some realm at that early age that this would be expected of me, and I was sure that there was nothing in me that was going to let him down. His love of theater, I believe, was the reason that I participated in the first play of the Prescott Fine Arts Association, which is now the Prescott Center for the Arts, back in 1969, and I've had season tickets there for 23 years. He was a frequent participant in Tulsa Little Theater productions, took our family to Radio City and to New York City plays, and he bought the soundtracks of Broadway musicals, which we played ad infinitum on his home-built Heathkit hi-fi system until we had all the songs memorized. He was one of the best-read people I have ever known. It seemed to me that he could talk in depth with almost anybody about anything. He wrote a book, A Unitarian States His Case, which includes individual chapters explaining our faith concerning character, God, immortality, the Bible, Christmas, and more chapters. He got along with almost everyone and was equally at home with his brother-in-law, who taught at the Harvard Business School, as he was with the 16-year-old in overalls pumping gas into our car in rural Kansas. He was a no-nonsense instructor in gun safety for my brother, sister, and me, with a 21-gauge rifle that he purchased exclusively for our target practice. Just as he enforced a no horsing around with a gun ethic and the necessity of our cleaning the gun after each target shooting session, he also taught us that if we were fishing and we should accidentally catch a fish, we cleaned the fish. About 12 years into his work in Tulsa, the church outgrew its original campus. Funds were raised and ground was broken for a new church building, which is still used today, although greatly enlarged, and now houses the largest Unitarian congregation in the country. Bob Sonnen had thrived on the challenge of building a church while he was there in 14 years, and he began to get the itch to move on as he was still in his mid-40s, and he wanted to do the same thing in another congregation in another city. But around that time, our family's life changed dramatically with the death of our mother when she was 46, and my siblings and I were 11 and 13. For a year after her passing, he tried his best, but not very successfully, to fill the role of mother and father for us, but he really didn't know how. When he told us that he was remarrying a year later, I said to him rather bluntly, "Good, you need a wife and this house needs a mother." Following his marriage to our stepmother, the remaining 9 years of his life took him to churches in Miami, Florida, and Orange, New Jersey, but did not result in the satisfaction of having built a church the way he had done in Tulsa. He passed away alone in the social hall of the church that he was serving in Orange, New Jersey, on a Saturday evening. He had finished his sermon. It was stacked on his desk. His coat was folded over the arm of a chair, and he was checking for locked doors in the church before going home to my stepmother for dinner when he was struck with a massive coronary at the age of 55. I have had a blessed life, and I attribute much of who I am and most of my values and my relationship with others and my community to what I learned from my father during the first 24 years of my life when he was still alive. My only regret is that he did not live long enough so that I could have enjoyed an adult to adult relationship with him, as there was so much more to learn.
Let us bear witness to the love of these three fathers who showed love each in their own way. And let us sing together, Guide My Feet. I invite you to rise in body or spirit, and we will sing together. Guide my feet while I run this race. Guide my feet while I run this race. Guide my feet while I run this race. For I don't want to run this race in vain. Hold my hand while I run this race. Hold my hand while I run this race. Hold my hand while I run this race. For I don't want to run this race in vain. Stand by me while I run this race. Stand by me while I run this race. Stand by me while I run this race. For I don't want to run this race in vain. Search my heart while I run this race. Search my heart while I run this race. Search my heart while I run this race. For I don't want to run this race in vain. Thank you. Thank you. May we all be guided by the gratitude that we bring not only to the trees and mountains and the people who are alive around us. Let us give gratitude in our lives to those who are gone. And on this day, let us give thanks, especially to those who have been fathers to us, who are still on this earth or who have left it. And when we wonder what to do, let us think back on perhaps what that father might have done. Let us bring that wisdom more and more into our lives. Amen. And may it be so, with thanks for fathers. And now we extinguish our chalice. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. And now I invite anyone who, those of you who are online, there is cheesecake. You have 10 minutes to get here before it will be all gone. But just telling you, there's cheesecake. And there are cookies for the fathers. Anyone who considers themselves to be a father, but there aren't many, unfortunately, but there's lots of cheesecake. But the cheesecake, so the cheesecake that we have provided today is provided because we have been able to enjoy the leadership for the past 3 years of a remarkable woman. Her name is Elaine Hayes, and she has been our board president. And she has been our board president, although Marianne Erickson was here for the first part. The baton was passed early in the pandemic to Elaine, and she has brought wonderful leadership to this community. And she kept going that third year when she was tired. And if we don't see her for a while, we can all understand that. But if you don't see her, give her a call and tell her you miss her. Elaine, would you like to say anything?
It's been a pleasure to serve this community, and I was honored to do so. And I'm so thankful and grateful and glad to pass the baton on to Rick Denny.
Thank you, Elaine. And these flowers actually came from the Pride picnic.